Hello, and welcome to what has felt like a very long fortnight on the Isle, where the last couple weeks have been pretty busy. In case you couldn't tell, if you're watching the video and you watch, been watching my channel for the last year, you'll see that I have a slightly new office setup. Not all of it is visible in this version of the picture that I have right now, but close enough of it is that you get a pretty heavy sneak peek at the rearrangement, which is pretty fun. Although I should note on that front that the most of the rest of the videos for the remaining portion of the summer are going to be with the old setup. This is just the new one for now, so you might have like a handful of videos over the next 2 months that come from this setup. But this is still the new setup, and I'm actually very happy with it. But like I said, the last fortnight has been pretty long. Not only did I do the rearrangement of my office and spent a lot of time doing that, and actually took a little bit longer than I planned on that front, but I also had some other things that I did. Took a couple trips to a couple different places. One of those trips was to take a gift that I got from a friend to get framed so that it can be in the background of the video there. On the full screen face cam, you'll be able to see it on the wall. I'm really excited for that. Then I also took my car in to mechanics and got a couple issues taken care of, which is always pretty nice. But in the wake of being pretty busy overall with a lot of other things, well, let's just say that my reading was a little bit more hit or miss over this fortnight. So let's just talk about that. For the bi-weekly reading, I'm gonna note right at the head of this that I may be missing something on this list. I may be forgetting something here just because my brain's been on so many other things the last couple weeks that it's kind of hard to keep track of what all happened between the real life stuff and the rest of the things that I'm going to talk about in this video. But the first thing that I know I did over the fortnight was I finished the second book in this collection, The Long Walk by Stephen King. One that I read for the first time back in 2020 and remember heavily enjoying, and my memory was correct. I still really enjoyed it. I don't think it's like as infallible, as perfect as I remembered it being, but still very much up there. One that I think that everybody should try reading because it is really good. And for one to be written by King when he was so young at the time that he wrote it, I believe he was only like 17 or something like that. I think he was still a teenager. It's really impressive work for somebody to be so young and to write something that good. Otherwise, last fortnight saw me take a little bit of a break from Infinite Jest for a couple weeks to work on some other stuff while I was busy with other stuff. This fortnight has seen me continue this, although I didn't get to continue until just this weekend. Maybe, did I read last weekend? I think I might have read last weekend. Like I said, my brain's all scrambled. I think I did actually read quite a bit last weekend, and I've read a little bit more this weekend. I have hit the 50% mark in the book, which is pretty neat, but that's only 50% of the book, so that kind of feels weird man type of moment. I think I'm on track to be able to finish this on the time that I wanted to, and also allow me a little bit of free time to read some other things over the summer that I wasn't sure if I would have time for. So I've seen me pick up a couple of things that maybe I shouldn't have, or didn't anticipate that I would. For example, one of those things is the next thing that I read over the fortnight, and that was starting Light of the Jedi, a novel in the High Republic series or Star Wars. I don't know if you can really see that cover super clearly, but that is what I started. Sure, this series falls within the new canon of Star Wars, which I'm not particularly fond of. I don't think I'm as hostile to it as most other classic Star Wars fans are, or say like my best friend is, but I'm also not necessarily a huge fan of the new canon either. This book has been quite fun. Star Wars is easy to enjoy, and being able to start it and listen to it in the mornings while getting ready for work, and like a couple weekends ago when I was starting to do some stuff with my office in here, I was listening to that after my brain was fried from Infinite Jest. And let's just say it's so much easier to listen to a Star Wars book than it is to read Infinite Jest. That is one fact I'll tell you for free. But the book's fun. I don't know how great it's going to be in the finale, but I'm most of the way through part 2, I believe, out of 3. I'm like 50 something percent of the way through that book, maybe 60%, little over halfway, so not an insignificant amount of the way through. I'm enjoying that one so far. The other thing that I started was the second book in this little binding that I have. So The Terminal Man by Michael Crichton. Finally, after 2 years, like actually over 2 years, getting back to Crichton. It feels super weird to be admitting that it's been 2 years since I got to him, when I planned on having him be more of a regular fixture on the channel for a long time until I finished his book. So the fact that I'm barely getting to the Terminal Man is a feels weird man moment. But funny story that happened over the course of reading this. This was last weekend, so yeah, I did read a lot of Infinite Jest last weekend. I was reading Infinite Jest, and there was a section, a very specific section about a certain subset of topics that the very next day when I started the Terminal Man, not even having any idea what it was about, talked about the exact same stuff, gave me the weirdest bout of deja vu I've ever had in my life. So that was a fun and memorable event. I think I will always remember both of those two books, if for nothing else, for that specific event. Like, that's going to be one of the things that if anybody mentions deja vu, that's probably the first thing that I'm going to think about for until something even crazier happens. So that was fun. Otherwise, the only short story or novella that I got read this fortnight was E.T.A. Hoffman's The Sandman. I believe that was this fortnight. I don't have it on the notes from last fortnight's video, so I think I must have read it like right after I finished working on that video or something. It feels like it was a lot longer ago than like within the last 2 weeks that I read it, but it was one that I enjoyed. I don't know how much like I really loved it. I found portions of it quite confusing. It wasn't altogether clear in other ways, but also one of the most fun stories that I've covered, that I'm going to be doing on Short Story Sundays at one point or another, because of the lack of definitive interpretation, where some of the stories that I've read have just been, you know, more or less just laying out like, this is what happens in the story. There's not really a whole lot to it other than that. I think The Sandman is one that's a lot more rife for interpretation and interpretive analysis, and you know, just not necessarily arguing, but arguing with people about what it might be about. It was an interesting story for sure. Like I said, I have no idea if there's maybe something I'm missing here. If there is, I'm sorry for that, but I'm not altogether certain. So we're just going to move right on to the bi-weekly writing, where I am proud to say I finally got a little bit more work done in the Reign of Ash. I got about 1,100 words added on that. So the last book in the Silent Reign trilogy is coming along pretty great now. I determined last time I worked on it, probably a month or so ago, that working on the timeline for this outline was going to be rough, and has been rough because of a lot of reasons, based off the way that POVs and scenes kind of jump in certain places, how they're not happening like at the exact same time as one another, but they have to come together in the end. I realized that, like, hey, when I'm coming up to the end and the climax, maybe I should have that be at a date. I know when the date for that event is, so maybe I should determine that and then work backwards later. And I started part 4 of this outline, revising it, and it's proving to be correct. The timeline for this through the rest of the story has actually been really easy to determine. I've gotten a few more scenes in, like I said, 1,100 words added to this outline. So I think that once I'm finished with this, going back and editing the timeline for the first 3 parts will still be pretty rough. I'll have to find a way to work on that in a way that's not necessarily the way that the book itself is fully organized, just to help keep my brain straight, because that was another reason why it was so difficult to work on that. But I am going to get a little bit further in that this month. I don't think I'll be finished with this outline by the end of June, but I think my plan of having it done by the end of July is very realistic at this point, because these last 2 parts, despite having to rewrite a lot of it, is still going to go by quite easy, because I'm not having to worry about the timeline stuff. So that is very encouraging. I did write another couple of book reviews for Goodreads. One of those was for The Sandman, so it was a little bit of a shorter, briefer one, only like 300 words. But I wrote a 1,000-word review for The Long Walk, which maybe not my best review that I've ever written, but is one that I enjoyed writing nonetheless. So that one is up there if you feel like checking it out. Otherwise, most of the writing that I did over the last couple weeks was actually over the last few, or well, was rather over like 2 days in the middle of this past week, because I was writing an impromptu 21 Pilots discography ranking. After listening to Clancy a couple weeks ago, I was like, you know, I kind of want to go back and explore the band's back catalog a little bit. So I went back to Blurry Face and was like, yeah, this album holds up. So then I continued on through the storyline, re-listened to Trench and Scaled and Icy again, and then Clancy one more time to kind of get the storyline don't know a whole lot about the storyline, but I did that. And then I listened to their catalog from before Blurry Face. So that was Vessel, Regional at Best. I was able to find versions of the songs from that, and then also the self-titled album. And started to write reviews for those albums for a music website that I'm on called Music Board. It's kind of like Goodreads, but for music. And I was like, if I'm going to write reviews for all of these albums, why don't I just write a discography ranking for the second channel? So I've been writing that. I only have a couple more sections to write of that. I think by the time I'm done with it, it'll be close to 5,000 words, maybe even a little bit more than that. But that is one of the things that I've been working on after, having a few videos that I've wanted to work on for the second channel as far as those blogs and reviews were concerned that I just haven't. It's just kind of the way things go sometimes, but I did a lot more writing the last couple weeks than I have for a good long while before that, so I guess I'll take that as a win for now. As for the coming releases, I do have a few more videos that I'm rather excited about to announce for you. So coming this Tuesday on the 25th of the month will be a review for Outer Dark by Cormac McCarthy, another one of the books that I would say was overall a hit for me, but did have some other stuff that I wasn't too fond of either. That review I'm actually pretty happy with, so I hope you'll watch that one. On this Thursday, the 27th, will be a little bit more of a discussion type of video, basically talking about the infinitude that is the TBR. The problem with to-do lists, the TBR is a fractal, various different titles that I was coming up with for that video, but I talk about that on Thursday. That was a fun video, and I think a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be before recording, so that's a thing that happened. Next Sunday, on the 30th of June, the last day of the month, will be the 13th episode of Short Story Sundays, this time on The Thing Invisible by William Hope Hodgson, which is the first story that I'm covering of the Karnaki, the ghost hunter, ghost finder stories out there. The Thing Invisible, I really, really loved. I loved reading that story. So that video I'm pretty fond of for the reason that I enjoyed the story so much and the mystery of it. Next Tuesday, on the 2nd of July, will be my June reading wrap-up and July TBR, and considering how scrambled my reading has been the whole last month and trying to figure out what I have and haven't read, that video is probably going to be a lot more tough to organize than I want it to be, but we'll kind of see how things go on that front. But the next Thursday, on July 4th, yes, I know it is an American holiday, but I'll be releasing my Infinite Jest Diary number 3 on that day. So anybody who at any point over that weekend wants to check that video out will be available then. I think that my reading for this diary will actually be a lot less complicated than for the last diary, where there was a lot of stuff that's just like, I don't even really know what I read. This time it's more like I have an idea of stuff that's going on, so that's encouraging. But that will be next Thursday. On the second channel will be the first couple episodes of the Remnant from the Ashes DLC titled Patient 2923. So those will release on the 28th and the 5th. Coming up on the end of that Let's Play, and I'm realizing that I still have not gotten to touch anything with the second game Let's Play yet, so I probably should do that, because, yeah, those videos are going to need to come out starting in, like, August or something like that, so I only have a month to work on those. Oh, man, time is not my friend most of the time. As for entertainment talk, well, I finished my GRIME New Game Plus run, including the secret boss. So I got all of the trophies on it and everything, including, all the various different DLC patches and stuff, because all the DLC for that game was free with it. So if you buy the game, you have all the DLC with it. It's kind of like a Hollow Knight situation as far as that's concerned. The secret boss, which is a New Game Plus only boss, was so much more difficult than anything else in the game. I was a little caught off guard by it, even feeling like I was prepared. But I had a great time with the boss. It's very, very well designed in most regards. I feel almost empty having finished the game and finishing that run. So empty, in fact, that I think I'm really soon going to, hop onto my Steam profile of the game and do New Game Plus there again to get, the rest of the trophies on that account, and then to, fight the boss again and just go through that content again. I think it'll be a fun time if I do that. If you don't want spoilers for the game for some reason, or for the boss or whatever, you can skip to the next section here if you want. I want to show the ultimate attempt that it took for me to beat the final boss. You'll notice over the course of the fight that I did really quite well for the first few phases. You not believe how many times it took for me to do those first couple phases overall, as well as this run kind of showed them for the most part. Didn't make nearly as many mistakes. Got up to the top there and climbing on these pole items just so much better than I did in previous attempts, so much quicker. But then the last phase I kept on struggling with. The very first time I got to the phase, I didn't realize there was going to be a final phase there. Let's just say absolutely destroyed me in 2.5 seconds flat. And then every subsequent attempt was almost equally as bad, until I realized that, hey, this is literally just the first, 1-2 phases, depending on how you consider it, again, except with an added element there. I just need to pay more attention and be more patient. And so I was able to get through most of the fourth phase pretty well, or I guess you would consider it the fourth and fifth phase, I suppose, if you wanted to. I got through them pretty well until I nearly died, and you'll see that I just absolutely start panicking. You'll see my the boss's health bar get so low. I'm just trying to heal and heal and heal, trying to keep myself up instead of just dodging and attacking the 1 or 2 last hits to kill him like I should have. Yeah, my panic in the very end of this fight was absolutely hilarious. But boss is super fun, and I definitely recommend the game. It's probably my favorite Metroidvania that I've played, maybe even more than Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight's really great, but GRIME is just the one that's like really sucked me in, and I've completed it multiple times. Hollow Knight I still have not completed yet, because I've done 106%, I believe, in one of my runs of it. But I never was able to get more than that, because a couple of those bosses are just super tough. Sometimes I really struggle with that game. GRIME I really love. I definitely recommend it. But moving on to music talk, thankfully, there's a little bit less to talk about this time than the last couple of these updates. I've gone on too long with music talk the last couple times, so I'm going to blitz right through these. First thing, an album released a couple weeks ago that I didn't talk about in the last one because I didn't know about it is Grave Rot by Wraith Funeral, which is a little bit more interesting of a deathcore record that actually takes its musical elements in directions that like maybe you wouldn't expect. It's not super repetitive the way that a lot of deathcore can be, where it's like, okay, well that 40-minute album could have been like 10 or 15 minutes shorter and you would have gotten the exact same experience. Grave Rot is one that actually definitely differentiates most songs. There's the same style, same like tuning and stuff like that. You can tell it's one cohesive piece, but isn't super repetitive the way that a lot of deathcore is, so I enjoyed that. But for the singles that have released over the last couple weeks that I want to give a shout out to, The Browning released a new single called Deceiver, which I think is the most I think it's probably their heaviest track they've ever done. It is the most unabashedly deathcore song, I think. So I really enjoyed that, but still had the, boppy dance element that they always have. All That Remains released another single, Let You Go, I believe. I can't remember if it's called Let You Go or Let Me Go. But either way, whichever one it's titled, this single I really like a lot. Their last single was pretty fun, but not my favorite thing in the world. This single was actually really, really good, so I'm really happy with that one. Our Hollow, Our Home released Funeral Verse, which I'm not sure if this is the weakest of the 3 songs they've released since they got the whole new band lineup. But I will just say the first of these 3 songs that they've released with the new lineup is by far my favorite. These 2 recent singles have been kind of hit or miss. They've just felt a little bit more like generic metalcore to me, which is unfortunate, but I'm still looking forward to a full album to see what it is they do with it. And then another more recent act within the metalcore, deathcore scene is Melora, released a single called Queen of Negligence. They only have 3 songs out in total so far, but Queen of Negligence is by far the best one of those. I think the clean vocals for this band are just top notch. They're very, very good and very catchy, so I really liked that song. Otherwise, the only album to really shout out over the last couple weeks was that Wage War released a new album called Stigma, although I'm not sure how happy I am with it. Like, I'm not someone who hates the sort of style of metalcore that they've done for the last 2, maybe even 3 albums, depending on how you count it. Stigma has a lot of DNA shared with Pressure and Manic both, but Pressure is really good in its own way. I understand why people didn't like it. I didn't like it at first, but then I came around to it for lyrical and emotional reasons. But Manic is just actually a really good album. I went to that one after Stigma thinking, oh, Stigma is on a pretty similar level as Manic for me. But then I listened to Manic again, I'm like, actually no, Stigma has nothing on this album. And Stigma's probably their weakest album, just straight up, which is unfortunate. Like, it's got a couple good songs, it's got some good ideas, but I think their style is playing out at this point. So I hope they kind of try to do something different with the next record, because yeah, Manic was probably the peak of what they could do with this specific style that they're working on for the last couple records. Although a lot of people I know want them to go back to the style of the first couple records. So, I'm not going to argue with that, but I think that Stigma's just okay, I guess. But that's all for this Fortnight on the Isle. I've definitely rambled a little bit on this one, and I apologize. But thank you for watching if you did. I'll be back, like I said, on Tuesday with a review for Outer Dark by Cormac McCarthy. So if you're haven't been fond of me dissing McCarthy on a lot of things, then you should watch that review, because I had a lot of good things to say about that book. I definitely enjoyed it quite a bit, and I respect McCarthy a lot for what he was doing with it. But with that being said, I'm going to get out of your face now. Thank you for watching again. I'll be back in the next one.